For DEP Cabinet Secretary Randy Huffman, fishing is more than just a hobby.
Secretary Huffman joins Deputy Secretary and Director of the DEP's Division of Water and Waste Management, Scott Mandirola, for a fishing trip on the Kanawha and a conversation about the importance of clean water to the state's economy.
Hi, my name's Randy Huffman. I'm the Cabinet Secretary for the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. I'm here on the Kanawha River today with Scott Mandirola. Scott is the agency's Deputy Cabinet Secretary and its Director of the Water Division. One of the things that a lot of people may not realize is the best way to measure the health of the stream or the health of the water body, whatever it is to measure the amount of life that's in it, the aquatic life, all the way from the microinvertebrates, the bugs, the crayfish, up to the fish species that inhabit the river. I've lived within miles of the Kanawha River my entire life, and it's not always been as clean as it is today. A lot of people don't realize how many different species of fish there are in the river and how abundant they are. And that's a testimony to the efforts of a lot of people and the Clean Water Act over the past few decades in cleaning our rivers up. Was that on a
swim bait?
Swim bait? Good.
It's a sauger. Or no, it's a walleye.
That's a walleye.
Well, he took it too.
That's really neat because walleyes are one of the most pollution intolerant species there are. When you see them in the water, you know you got some.
The water's famous for walleye are mostly clear, clean lakes up in Michigan and up in the northern part of the country. They like cold water, but they like clean water. Is the most important thing with walleye. We've got some video from back during the 50s and 60s, showed some of the outfalls along the Kanawha River, and it would not even be recognizable in comparison to what you're looking at today. The outfalls prior to the Clean Water Act were relatively unregulated. Industry dumped their waste products into the river pretty much, again, unregulated, without too much concern for the river itself. Now, the discharges, as we see some of these along the river now, are completely regulated with NPDES permits that are required to meet water quality standards. Just 2 years ago, the legislature passed a provision in the water quality standard to allow the first 72 miles of the Kanawha River to be used as a drinking water source again, if some community along it so chose. Prior to that, with the inception of the Clean Water Act and when the standards first came into play, the first 72 miles of the Kanawha River really didn't support the use as a drinking water source because of the discharges and the level of pollution in the river at that time. But that has changed so dramatically that at this point in time, the river, both below and above that 72-mile mark, is more than sufficient quality to be used as a drinking water source.
There's a really nice fish. That's a really good fish. That's a quality smallmouth. Can get him in the boat with that loose thing. That's what it's all about. That's a really nice fish. He's healthy. He's clean. They're up in here getting ready to spawn. They're doing what they're doing, and that's why we do it. You know, I've been fishing competitively, tournament fishing for bass on this river for over 20 years, and it's amazing the number and quality of fish that it just continues to produce. And there's a lot of fishing pressure on it. You know, we don't have a lot of big water in West Virginia like they do down south. You know, we don't have the 25,000, 30,000, 50,000 acre lakes. We have some small rivers, and we have our 1,500, 2,000 acre lakes. So a lot of people want to fish. It's an important resource. It's an important part of our economy, and but we're limited. So we have to take care of it. We have to manage it right, and water quality is that's the name of the game. In order to support the level of fisheries that we need, we've got to have good water quality. What is really goes unspoken, not talked about very much, is that how much that resource contributes to our state's economy, and most importantly, the potential it has to do even more when it's managed correctly. Whenever I go to one of my fishing tournaments here, we have them in Charleston all the time. There could be 60 to 100 boats participating at any time in one of these tournaments. And these guys spend a lot of money. They all have expensive trucks and they have expensive boats. And when you go into a parking lot on a Saturday morning and you look out there and you see $1 million or $1.5 million worth of boat and truck sitting in a parking lot, you then begin to understand that connection and the potential that exists between water quality and economic development. People are not going to spend that kind of money if there's no fish to catch, and that's what it boils down to. And that provides a lot of opportunity. And when you're talking about a state where sometimes opportunity is limited because of the terrain and the infrastructure and other things, this is a great resource.
The river, the Kanawha River, isn't just rejuvenated because a lot of business has moved out of the valley. That's really not it. It's the ability to treat and regulate water and discharges to the point where they can coexist. You can have industry on a river and you can have recreational uses on a river. They do not need to be mutually exclusive. The Ohio River is a great example of that because, you know, the Ohio River is also a very unique fishery with a huge diversity of fish, and it's still one of the most industrialized rivers on the East Coast.
I think what's important, and the point that we're really trying to make here, is that there's a connection, a strong connection between water quality and an economy. In this case, our state's economy is what we're specifically talking about. High water quality leads to an increased usage of the resource, whether that be for industry or for recreational purposes, both of which contribute to the economy. So I think when we're talking about water quality, we're talking about the ability of the water to sustain life, not just us, not just human life, but also aquatic life. And that aquatic life leads to a increased fishing, increased recreational use, and that leads to dollars being spent. So I think that nexus is huge. There's a tremendous opportunity for us to continue in this state to capitalize on that. Again, from a recreational standpoint, which is very important. It has to do with quality of life. It also contributes real dollars to the economy, but also, and very importantly, for the increased opportunities that exist for good jobs with a strong industrial base. And a strong industrial base does not want weaker water quality standards. They want stronger water quality standards because that protects the water that they need also for their business.
According to the most recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau, fishing activity in West Virginia generated over $420 million spent, an average of nearly $1,400 spent per angler. West Virginia is home to more than 800 tourism businesses selling fishing and outdoor equipment that employ over 2,800 people. When you add in boating, paddling, and whitewater rafting, the totals climb even higher. Visitors to the New River Gorge, just to give you one example, generated $47 million in tourism revenue in 2014 alone.